Can I have everyone's attention, please? We're going to get started with our program. I'm going to read a little bio I have here for my good friend Ariana, which I want to say in my first week of being part of the chamber, I received a visit from her and Bree, and I think, was that the two of you? They were the first ones to visit me. They gave me a plant that still sits on my desk, and I really appreciate that. And I've had such a great time working with the young professionals. Ariana is the president of the Prescott Area Young Professionals. She leads that group passionately and is making a positive and lasting impact on our community. As a millennial, she values finding a sense of purpose in her work and has been with Cable One Advertising for 10 years, working with local businesses on their video marketing. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please welcome Ariana, and she's going to introduce our panel.
Hi, guys. So, as Sherry said, my name is Ariana. I'm the president of Prescott Area Young Professionals. We collaborate with the Prescott Chamber, the Prescott Valley Chamber, and the Chino Valley Chamber to serve those 21 to 40 years old in serving our community. Our mission is to connect, educate, and impact. If you're a PAYP member, please raise your hand. Thank you guys for all you do. So today, we're going to be talking about millennials and their perceptions and misconceptions. Millennials are defined as being born sometime in the early 1980s through the early 2000s and have graduated high school in the new millennium. There are a ton of misconceptions on what we really care about and what we believe in. Millennials are entitled, spoiled, lazy, obsessed with social media, and lack a strong work ethic. The list goes on and on. Over the past 3 decades, millennials have earned a bad rap, but is that really warranted? Millennials are not so different from other generations. They want to like what they do. They want to like who they work with, and they want to know what they do is valued. Our goal today is to open up the dialogue surrounding millennials and start a conversation on the perceptions we may have about this generation and dispel some of those misconceptions. I'll be asking our panel today some questions that we received from the chamber and the chamber members. And we'll receive their point of view based on their experience working with millennials or in everyday experiences with millennials. So today we have Krista Carmen. Krista Carmen is a local attorney who manages her firm with her husband. She is president of the PUSD Education Foundation and an attorney for PUSD. She has millennial employees, staff, and exposure to many millennials through her work with PUSD. We also have Holly Maurer. Holly Maurer is the vice president of operations for Prescott Hotels and also serves as the general manager for Residence Inn by Marriott in Prescott, and the regional director of sales for all 3 hotels that Ponderosa manages in Prescott. In addition, Holly volunteers to teach through guest speaking events at Northern Arizona University School of Hotel and Restaurant Management on leadership and ethics in hospitality. Courtney Osterfeld. Courtney is the founder and director of the Launchpad Teen Center, a nonprofit teen center in Prescott, Arizona. She is originally from Fort Collins, Colorado, and moved here 16 years ago to attend Prescott College. After graduating, started a program for teenage girls called WEB, and 16 years later, WEB is still going and is now part of the Launchpad. Danielle Rickert. Danielle has owned multiple businesses since 2003. I'm throwing in weird numbers. Both in California and Prescott, hiring and working with millennials. She has lived in Prescott for 3 years and serves on the Prescott Chamber of Commerce Board, as well as the Prescott Area Young Professionals core team. Michelle Wells. Michelle has raised 5 children. She has been the membership director for the club at Prescott Lakes for 6 years and has been a small business owner for 15 years. With a background in mission work in South America, she ran schools for locals and specialized in grants funding. So today, this is your panel. So I'll start with the first question. And then I'll pass this microphone over. So panel, a widely held perception is that millennials are entitled, but I have had many millennial colleagues that are hardworking. Is this perception born out of a gap in understanding between different generations of what millennials value?
I think that millennials aren't any less hardworking than any other generation in general. We can't generalize any generation. There's pluses and negatives to any generation. But what's different about millennials is that they can work differently and they want to work differently because of technology, because of flexibility, because of work-life balance. They don't want to work any less. They just want it to look differently. They might want to hike and do yoga on Tuesday but work all day on Sunday. And that's just a different way of viewing hardworking.
To address the entitled piece, I do think millennials are entitled. I am a millennial. But I also think, and a lot of us work through that, thankfully, but I also think that we are hardworking, and you can be both. I don't think it's an either or. I think that maybe sometimes millennials who haven't worked through the entitlement piece, they've grown up in families where, and in a culture where you get a trophy for everything, and if you want to get into an honors class but you didn't do the work to get into the honors class, maybe your mom calls and complains, and then you get into the honors class, or maybe you get an A, you didn't really deserve the A, but your parents called and complained about you not having an A and you got the A. And then you leave your home and you're in the real world and it doesn't work like that. And so suddenly your self-confidence takes a dive, but you still feel entitled because that's the culture you grew up in. But that doesn't mean you can't also work hard. So I think a lot of millennials are dealing with this. That's confusing. That's not their fault. I think they're dealing with that sort of contradiction of how they were raised and how the quote-unquote real world operates when they leave their home.
Hi. Okay, so that has two parts, right? So are they entitled? Probably, you know, because you said based on the way they were raised, potentially, but I don't think necessarily that's a bad thing. You can work through it. And I think as an employer, I pay attention to that and I look at how I'm going to motivate somebody. I'm not looking at, okay, yeah, they're entitled, but that doesn't get me anywhere. That doesn't solve a solution. Okay, so what am I going to do about it? I'm going to try to motivate that person. So the second part of that question is, what do they value? They value a life of purpose, which I would say every generation values. I want to wake up in the morning and know that what I do has a purpose, that I'm going to work to benefit more than just me, or at least my family, and make, you know, money to get food on the table, roof over my head. Whatever it may be for you, you're going to work for that purpose. So I have to figure out what that employee needs and give it to them in different ways. I could talk a long time. So you might have to stop me. Yeah, so I mean, I think that there is a difference in the generations, and it's my job as an employer to recognize that. I don't, though, to be honest with you. I never look at my employees as millennial or not. I've been forced to do that because of this panel. Like, I had to go look at what I do and why I do it. And really, all I do is I look at how do I motivate my employees. And I think that there's 3 things I do. I try to train them because I think that that's going to give them value. They're going to feel like they're learning something and they're growing, and it's got to continue. It's not like the first week, okay, you're good, go, do your thing. No, they need to continually feel like they're getting something out of coming to work here. Secondly, they need to feel appreciated. They need to feel valued, like what they're doing, I appreciate it. And as an employer, I need to feel appreciated too. Like if I'm gonna do something for you, I want a simple thank you. You know, I want to feel like I did that and it was worth something to you, you know? So all you millennials out there, keep that in mind. And then thirdly, I think I try to give them some kind of incentive program. I want them to feel like they're part of the company in some way, that what they're doing every day benefits them, affects them directly, not just me. So anyway, those are my 3 things today.
So, Krista, can you hear me? Krista. Yeah. In your experience in working with millennials, how do they tick that you understand them better and can help them succeed? How do they tick? Yes. What's the difference for you in working with millennials?
Millennials, I think, like to work for a purpose. And I love working with millennials for that reason, especially when we're working with the PUSD Education Foundation, because I'll tell you, I don't think the bond and override passed in Prescott, but for millennials. Those kids got behind that effort, and part of our strategy was, let's get the young people involved. Let's get the Prescott Area Young Professionals. Let's get the high school students who will then motivate their parents and their grandparents. But they want something to be passionate about, and they want to work somewhere where they can contribute. And I know that there are businesses in this room that do that really well, that the Bergamini Group, they serve together, their team likes to give back to the community together. So that's more than just selling real estate. You're giving back to your community. And I think that's what makes millennials tick, and that's why I think they're awesome to work with.
Thank you, Krista. Okay. Just can't hear it. So the second question, what are millennials passionate about? What type of things are they ultimately concerned about so much that they organize everything they do around this concern?
So I'll take this question for a second. So yesterday I was at NAU teaching this class with a group of millennials sitting there, and we had 35 cards that all had words written on them, and they were all different values. And so we asked the class to separate it with their top 6 values, and then I did it, and the lead professor there did it as well. We're not millennials. Their top 3 values that the students all chose and all agreed on were philanthropy, which we were just talking about, fun, and teamwork. And they also had a 4th, which they cheated, but they had status, meaning what title is at the end of their name, right? Mine, Alondra, I'm sorry, but so Alondra works for me, and I can totally fit her into those values, but mine, on the other hand, were independence, authority, and loyalty. And so all of the students were like, that's so not us. We don't care about any of that. But I can't work in a team, and I don't care about having fun at work. I care about structure and authority, and that's how I work better. But the millennials that work for me don't. I mean, they all value fun and teamwork, and so I think that we just need to keep that in mind as leaders in the community and with our own businesses, and realize that we have to change the way. Even though those values may not be the front runner for us, they are for the younger demographic, and I think a lot of people, but especially with millennials.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm kind of looking at things a little bit differently from where I'm sitting, because I've raised millennials and I'm working with millennials, and I feel like I'm kind of in the middle of the baby boomer generation and the millennials, so I have kind of a little bit of a different perspective, but I couldn't agree with that more. They want to have fun, and work can be fun, because if we have goals that we hit at work as a team, then it can be fun. And actually, when you start doing that and you draw on that energy from the younger generation, it's really fun, and then work becomes totally different. I actually am working with a almost 23-year-old Embry-Riddle graduate right now, and she is phenomenal. She's taking her master's. She wants to work for the FBI. I mean, this girl is driven. And but this is her first real kind of structured work environment. So I've learned a lot about working with her, drawing on her energy. She sees things totally different than I do, really good. Like, she'll catch something that passed in front of my face 10 times and I didn't even see. And she'll see it from a completely different light, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome. So we've actually made some changes to the club at Prescott Lakes, which is predominantly 60 and older, based on how she sees things. But things that I've learned with her is make it very, very specific what you're requiring from her. Because I had her start doing kind of like work records just to help her manage her time, because this is new to her. As a mom, I was one of those people making those phone calls for the A's and begging to not throw my student out for 10 days because they got a fist fight or whatever the case may be. We've done it as a parent. So it's happened to me. But sometimes, as a parent, it's really, and a grandparent now, it's really important to let our kids fail. It's really important to teach them that it's okay to fail. It's okay to lose a ball game. It's okay to not get that B you thought you were going to get because you stayed up playing Playboy and you did, or whatever it is now, PlayStation, not Playboy, preferably not. PlayStation, excuse me. Clearly I don't play it. Game Boy is what I was going for. Anyway, it's good to let them fail.
Wow. That would keep you up late. But I'm kidding. So I work, we have 3 of us at the Launchpad who run the show kind of, and the 2 people I work with are much younger than I am. And one thing that I really notice is that they do want to feel like they're purposeful, and they do want to have an impact, and they want to make a difference in the community. I also think that their time frame of how that's going to happen is really different, because they've grown up in a culture where everything is just very much so instant gratification. Everything's right at your fingertips. And if you don't like something, you can exchange it for something else across the board, whether it's an experience, whether it's a boyfriend, swipe left, or like whatever it is, just like if you don't like it, exchange it for a new experience. And so I noticed that when some of right when they came on, they felt like if they weren't doing a great job within 6 months, that they weren't needed at the organization. And that was my fault, because it takes a long time to make an impact in an organization. It takes much longer than 6 months to have your work be meaningful. But as a leader, I needed to help create the environment where they realize that that's just part of the journey, and that their presence is enough. And if they show up every day and they do what they're told to do, that does make an impact, and to have a longer term vision than this sort of 6-month vision that I think they've been trained to have. And so we work a lot with that, and that's on me as a leader to really help them see that their work is impactful, even if it's not this like big difference that they're making right off the bat.
Okay, so this next question. I find among my millennial friends and colleagues that imposter syndrome commonly plagues us. Has imposter syndrome been as prevalent among other generations? Any tips in combating it? Everybody has a phone, Google it. Yeah.
I'll just give the background. We Googled this in our prep meeting because we were all like, imposter syndrome. Google, what is that? So in 1976, imposter syndrome, the phrase was coined. I don't think it was new to the 70s, but it basically is you feel like you're an imposter in your job, that you're never doing enough, that you're not good enough, that everybody else is eventually going to find you out. And my opinion on that is not a new problem. I'm sure our great-great-great-grandparents, but the world is different. And now we're faced with Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and everything. Pinterest, it crushes my soul, you guys. Like, I'm not a very good mom, apparently. Like, if you look at Pinterest, I'm not crafty. I don't know how to sew. I write briefs for a living. I mean, nobody's interested in that. But that's the problem. We feel like we're imposters because of what we are seeing. And Courtney and I were talking about this earlier. It's in our hand all the time. So even those of us that were raised on technology, I mean, I've been using computers since 2nd grade, but it wasn't always with us. It wasn't always in our home. I didn't have a smartphone until I was in my 20s. So it's just a different world right now. So these kids, these millennials, these young adults are dealing with this in a different level because they're looking at it and they're raised with it their entire life. This is what you're supposed to look like. This is what your perfect body is. These are your grades. This is what your home should look like. And that's why I think it's more prevalent now, or at least feels to be more prevalent.
So, in response to the technology thing, I was actually watching something earlier, and a good suggestion was to, like, if you're having a board meeting or a group meeting of some kind, you know, everybody, while they're waiting for it to start, they're on their phones like this. Like, I can't talk to you right now. I'm very busy. I need to see what people liked me. Yeah, or who unfriended me, or whatever, you know. But if you just put those away and you sit next to somebody and you go, hey, how was your day? I heard your dad's in the hospital. Oh, I'm sorry, you know. Whatever it might be, or, oh, how's that project going? Oh, I can help you with that. No, okay. That's how you build relationships, and that's how you find value in your job. I think it's the human interaction that's missing, and we have to find that balance between technology, which is awesome. I love technology. I am not against technology in any way, shape, or form. But I also value the connection I have with human beings. And I think that's something that we as leaders can, you know, integrate into the workplace. But as far as the imposter syndrome, combating that, I think that that's about self-worth. And yes, it's been around forever, everyone has it, and I choose to ignore fear and doubt because it's a waste of my time, it is a pure distraction from my life, and I don't need it. I don't value myself based on other people's opinions, nor do I value my company in that way. So I've seen no downside to saying, hey, you're awesome, and I'm awesome too. And we can both be awesome together in the same city. Okay, bye.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so Courtney kind of touched on this earlier, but with the perception of millennials job hopping, do millennials feel an expectation of immediate success?
So one of the best general managers that we have in our company is sitting in the room, and she definitely didn't have immediate success. I have to tell your story, Alondra. Alondra has been with us for, I don't even know how many years. 5 years. Thank you, Alondra. And she started as a housekeeper, and she worked all the way up to general manager, and she's probably the most successful general manager, except for me, because I was there too. But she's probably the most successful general manager that we've ever had for our company, but she did not just jump into that position. She was a housekeeper. I will tell you, though, when I was teaching yesterday, I asked the class, and I had 90 students in the class, and I said to them, and they're all, you know, graduating seniors, and I said, what are your plans? And we just kind of went around the room, and everybody was saying, oh, I have a plan to be a vice president of a company. I'm going to be a general manager. I'm going to be this. And I said, are any of you currently employed at a hotel? And they said, no, but that's what I'm going to do out of college. And so my career path was not like that. I also started in housekeeping and worked my way up to vice president of Ponderosa. And it's not easy, but I think that sometimes the pressure is on to have these big titles and these big roles, but it's not really realistic. And so we have to keep encouraging the younger generations to know that it's hard and it's lonely at the top, right? But it's really hard work. But they all got it and they all understood, but a lot of them said, you know, our parents are pressuring us to have these big jobs after college. They paid for my college, so now I have to get out and do something great. How cute is that? But so we did a lot of talk around that. But so I think that is a common misperception a lot of times for millennials, is that you're going to go out and get this amazing job. And it's hard work. I've been in the industry for 18, 19 years until I got this job, so.
I'm going through this a little bit with my son right now. He just graduated with really high honors in Phoenix, and the thing that I've been telling him, he's a little more, you know, I was a single mom here in this town with 5 kids, so we learned to really kind of work hard and be a team. So he has a little bit of a background of working very young, but he still wants that job. Like I got my degree in this field, and I'm going to do this. And I told him, honey, my degree's in social work. I'm a membership director. You have to, and I love what I do, but you have to be open-minded. So I think that if we help our younger millennials be open-minded and understand that, you know, I have 23 years background in food and beverage, but I started as a dishwasher. I started as a busser. I went all the way up to ownership before I switched professions. So it's sometimes when we're willing to kind of get in there and just be open-minded, you never know where that path is going to lead.
We spoke about this when we met last week too, and one of the things as a business owner that I find very frustrating when looking at resumes from millennials is the 6 months here, 6 months there, and why do I want to invite them into my company and invest the 6 months to train them and then they leave? Because I've just lost a lot of money and time in my company. And so that's one of the things that we've talked about. So I do think that that is a true statement about millennials. They do, in general, job hop. But have we created that monster? I think we have, in that we've raised this generation to be, if you're not happy, do something else. You watched your grandparents work in the same job for 50 years and then they lost their entire pension with the recession. So why would they want to do that? So if they're not going to maybe get that longevity or that pension ultimately, at least they're going to be happy for the next 6 months. So that's a problem that they need to work with, but we also need to help them work through it if we want to have good employees that stick with our businesses.
I would also add, I'm going to backtrack a little bit back to the imposter syndrome. I mean, that came out in the 70s for a reason, because it was connected to the women's movement. And it goes much back, much further back than that. Yes, totally. And everybody's experienced it, but I think predominantly it depends on who you're talking to. And now I think we have this generation where we do have men and women who are pretty equally experiencing that. And I think that goes back to the piece of what's the work environment like. And if you're inviting millennials in, and I'm not saying that people need to totally change their entire work environment to keep millennials, but I am saying that we can't go back and change parenting, failed parenting strategies. We can't change that as an employer. So am I just going to eliminate every person who I think grew up in a family where they told them to shift positions every time they're unhappy? Or or am I going to work on figuring out what kind of environment can I create where I can really tap into their potential? Because I do believe that millennials have something to offer that we can't get from any other population of people. And so what can I do as a boss to create an environment and create open lines of communication where they feel valued, where they feel like they're not an imposter, where they understand what grit is, and that it's not always going to be happy-go-lucky, and that sometimes we've got to write grant reports and clean up stupid messes on the carpet from teenagers, and it's just not always going to be hunky-dory. But that the long-term effort is worth it. And then the loyalty, I have 2 employers who said they were going to stop working for the Launchpad after 6 months because they wanted to go move on. And they've both been with me for 2 years. So I think that's great. And I've worked hard at creating an environment where they can thrive.
Thank you guys, all great answers. So some facts to kind of consider as we wrap up. Millennials are 35% of the workforce. By 2020, they'll be 46% of the working population. So today's conversation is to start that within, Marie's like, Today's conversation, I invite you to take it back to your offices, kind of have that conversation, figure out if your company wants to change, to attract millennials, to kind of get that new energy, that fire, and work to see if they'll stay with your company and help your company grow and succeed and excel. There are companies that millennials are working for, and they're succeeding because those millennials are on fire. Who's heard of Google? Facebook, Hootsuite. All these companies are attracting millennials. Now, obviously, not every company can go have a game room or offer hours to work all day Sunday and go do whatever on Tuesday. But what can your company, what can your workplace offer to start attracting some of those millennials? We had some discussions just amongst our teams in doing things as volunteering to make an impact on the community that these millennials are working in. So because we're out of time, I would just like to invite you guys to keep that conversation going. Prescott Area Young Professionals is not 100% millennials, but raise your hand if you are a millennial. Are you lazy? Are you entitled? I don't think so. So thank you guys all for coming. The panel will be here a little bit. So if you have more questions that you'd like to ask, please send them into the chamber, and we will continue this conversation as a community as well.
We do have just a few moments because this concludes at 1:15, and I think it would be nice if we could, if there was someone out there in the audience that may have a question that they want to ask.
One of the things I think, I don't know if my perception is wrong about this or not, but do you feel that the social environment for millennials is more challenging because people can go onto Facebook and create this image of who they are when that's not really who they are? Whereas my generation, I grew up in a small town and everybody knew who you were. If you were trying to be somebody you weren't, they just said, Bill's a fraud or he's a liar, because there was no other venue or media, so to speak, to present yourself in except in real time before human beings. And to me, I kind of feel sorry for the millennials because, you know, they're out there in the cosmic world of technology trying to find themselves or other people, and it seems to me that the imagery of fraudulence is more prevalent because of that. It was harder for me to be fraudulent. You know, I couldn't pretend I was somebody on a date to get a girlfriend or something like that because they knew, oh yeah, his dad works there and his mom's this and that. And so is this, how do you see that as a challenge for them?
I mean, at the Teen Center, we see that all the time. It's a major challenge. It's also their communication skills have decreased, their ability to empathize. Research has actually shown that millennials have lost the ability to empathize. That you have it and you gain it when you're younger and you make face-to-face communication, but we also have a generation of parents who are parenting, and while they give their kids a bath, are sitting on the side of the bathtub looking at their phone, not playing and imagining. And so all those skills that we use to have like one-on-one connection and meaningful relationships like empathy, communication, the ability to ask open-ended questions, to listen, they don't have those in the same way that our generations did. So I think that that's a real struggle. At the Launchpad, we have a mandatory unplug time, and I think that it's good for adults too. Whereas 30 minutes of unplugged time, and they hate it for the first 5, but then all of a sudden they made a new friend. They started a project that they really like. They maybe finished their homework, or they just goofed off and like laughed, shared laughter with somebody. And so I think it's really smart to have rules, and like we have no cell phones during our staff meetings, not in the room at all. You're here, and you make conversation with the person next to you. And so just implementing that into your businesses as well, I think is really important. But you're 100% right about that.
Thanks, Sherry. You know, in my experience working with millennials, I want to say a positive about them and say, about you all, and say that I believe that the millennial generation is holding business owners more accountable because they're saying, I'm not going to stay if I'm lied to. I'm not going to stay if you don't do what you say you're going to do. And I think that's incredibly important. I think that, well, I'm a boomer, and in my generation, you didn't say anything because you might lose your job. But I do think that the conversations that are coming from the millennial direction are really helping for us to find work-life balance and to hold people who say that they're going to implement things or that you're going to get a raise or whatever it is, holding them accountable. So thank you.
I thought I saw another.
Hi, so I'm actually on the other end of the spectrum. So I'm a millennial, but I'm in a unique situation because I manage our site in Prescott, and I actually oversee a lot of people who are older than me. So, you know, aside from going in and, you know, not taking my age to make me feel uncomfortable or anything, and I guess aside from, you know, researching the different values of other generations, I don't know, is there any kind of insight as to what I can do there? You know, I'm an open communicator, but this has got me thinking a lot about, okay, the energy that I take in sometimes, or the way that I want to set the culture of my organization, because I'm really focusing on that right now. But again, I think it's much different for me. I'm kind of in a different place. So any feedback for that would be helpful. I'm a program administrator for a nonprofit at Hajoni Foundation. So we have residential medical coordinators, program coordinators, and the majority of our population that we serve are also older individuals. So, yeah.
Okay. I think that if you're dealing with someone who's, are you talking about mostly in business, or are you talking about clientele? Mostly in business. Okay. So in business, I think that it's important to respect people that have maybe experience and knowledge as far as time, just time. I think it's important, and I think that unfortunately, there's, because of the bad rep around millennials and these, you know, stigmas that you're unfortunately up against, at the beginning, you probably have to tread a little lightly. But if you have a little respect and you're like, wow, that's a great idea, and then you open the door for them to really work with you. I know that's unfortunate. I work in the golf world, so I know, I understand that a little bit. If you look into the history of golf, you know what I'm talking about. I'm a woman, so I get it. But unfortunately, there's some similarities there. Just tread a little lightly and be respectful of your elders. And I think that you can learn a lot. And then they will actually be very open to you and your generation, because the fact of the matter is what you can bring, they can't learn unless they see it from you.
Have you seen the movie The Intern? You need to see it. Robert De Niro, who's the Anne Hathaway, and basically she is a millennial type business owner who's amazing. People are riding skateboards in the office, but she decides she needs the wisdom of someone who has done this a little longer, puts an ad out, and Robert De Niro becomes the intern in his 70s, and they learn from each other. It's a beautiful model. In fact, I wish we could get that going here in Prescott. I'd hire one.
It's done. Decided right here, right? All right. Well, let's give this group a round of applause. And Laura and Todd,